Admittedly, Breaking Bad has little to do with the Christmas season, but considering how much fun I had making this episode, I feel compelled to release it before the mid-season break, which will arrive towards the end of December. House museums, themed restaurants, amusement park rides that simulate real earthquakes, the desire to reenact, interact, and be directly involved with the past or things that are out of reach in the present have been a consistent theme ever since there's been in American popular culture. Ed Candelaria and Mark Smith, the creators and owners of the Breaking Bad Store ABQ in Albuquerque, New Mexico, spent time speaking with me about their business and how it is just as much of a reflection of the times as the TV programs it celebrates. All right. Welcome back to Everything is a Primary Source podcast, the EPS podcast for short. I'm Eric Paul. And today I am joined by Edward and Mark from the Breaking Bad Store in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I reached out to you a few months ago now, I think, right? To see about doing this because the nature of my podcast is treating everything out there as a indicator of the time period in which it came from. And so the show itself, Breaking Bad, is perfect for the early 2000s to do that. And, you know, every other piece of media is the same way, movies, TV shows, everything like that. But I think just the store experience itself is so telling of our time period that we're in now. And it's just, by the way, I was blown away by it. And I stopped in last summer of 2021. I made it sound like I stopped in, like I was just like around the block, but it was part of a cross-country trip from New Hampshire to the Grand Canyon. And it was actually our second stop in Albuquerque because we went on our way out, we stayed the night, and then we came back after the Grand Canyon to Albuquerque again. And when we were driving to our hotel, I just happened to look out the window. I'm like, oh, the Breaking Bad store is like a block from the hotel. That's so perfect because I think that's part of the reason I was in Albuquerque. I love that show. So if you don't mind, just tell us a little bit about where the idea came from and how you got it started, and maybe a little bit of background as to how you were able to pull that off.
Hello. Yes. This is Ed speaking. The store, it was always a idea floating around between Mark and I for like almost a decade. We started out doing Facebook groups for Breaking Bad, and then for Better Call Saul. And we always toyed with the idea of not of a store, but of a museum only, because we had gathered all this memorabilia throughout the years that we'd gotten from crew members and we obtained and what have you. And so, again, we were just going off, can we do a museum? It never started to be a store. And really, we owe it all to two things. One is the gentleman that started that has the RV tour. His name is Frank. He had a store in Old Town where our store is. And, but it encapsulated all the movies and TV shows that were filmed in Albuquerque with, so it had a little bit of Breaking Bad.
Okay.
And he wanted to focus more on the RV tour. So he asked us if we would take over. And, we said, well, let's think about it. But we went to Atlanta, Georgia, and we went to the Walking Dead convention. Mm-hmm. And when you go to Atlanta, we, of course, as Walking Dead fans, we went to the town where they shoots Walking Dead, and they have a Walking Dead store.
Okay.
And of course, Mark and I were like, well, again, if they can do that here, how come no one's done it in Albuquerque? And so Mark and I were like, well, let's just do it then. So we agreed with Frank, and it started as a little store, and it's grown. How much times would you say it's grown since our first store, Mark? It's twice the size. So,
no, 3 times the size of our original store. We've expanded twice.
Yeah. So, yeah.
And is that because as the saga has gone on, and I realize Better Call Saul is a prequel, but as the story has expanded, does that mean that you're collecting that much more stuff and finding? Because when I went in there, I was very glad, and to see that it's not just memorabilia, that you have that back section where you have Saul Goodman's office, and then there's Hector's wheelchair, and you have the stacks of money, and you could with the lawn chair, and you can be you have the Los Pollos Hermanos set up. Everything is there, and you can immerse yourself immediately into the show. Is that why it's expanded a few times? Is because you just keep getting more things from the set?
Well, we had all that stuff previously from parties that we had thrown. So we used to have fan-based parties every year, and every year we wanted to do something new. We wanted to give the fans something new to come and see part of it. And so when we were able to actually open the store, we didn't have the space in the first store. We just kind of had a wall. We didn't even have we had Saul's wall. We didn't have the desk. And then when we moved into our second location, we were able to put in the Los Pollos counter, and then we were able to put the desk in with the Saul photo opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the opportunity came to get into our third large store that you got to see last summer, it was like, hello, let's just bring it all out. Let the fans experience what they couldn't experience while they were filming.
Yeah.
And let them become part of the show. Let them do those things that fans want to do.
Yeah, and I think that's really the beauty of it, is that, and it speaks so much about the era that we're in, is that the way these shows are made. Part of the reason why they are so gripping and people love them so much is because with a shaky camera, and there's so much like that first person point of view, you already feel part of the show to begin with. You're immersed into it almost immediately, and with very relatable type characters. When you watch those shows, you can there's at least one character, or at least their persona, that you can get along with. And as people that we have access to so many virtual reality and so much, that it makes so much sense that we would want to take that next step. And it's not anything new. I mean, people have been having, experiences like the San Francisco earthquake, at an amusement park, Coney Island, 100 years ago. But, having it so authentic, like the way that you deliver it, I think is very timely for the era that we're in right now. Is that, and when I was making my plans for the trip, I make it seem like it was off the just the off the top of my head. I'm like, yeah, let's just head west and see what happens. When I was making the plans for the trip, I realized, and my wife did too, as we're stop where we wanted to stop along the way, I'm like, popular culture has dictated this entire trip. I'd heard of the Grand Canyon, of course, before the trip, but the reason I was like, that's what I want to do for my birthday, is go to the Grand Canyon, is because of the Brady Bunch. That whole thought, in that show, I was like, the way they, we didn't get to go to the bottom of the canyon and meet a Native American boy that wants to be an astronaut, but like, we
can get lost.
Yeah, it was like that, and National Lampoon's Vacation. The way it's presented there. And then along the trip, we our first main stop was in Cleveland, Ohio, where we went past Drew Carey's house, his childhood home, because you can find that online now. Like, there's where Drew Carey grew up, and there's the tavern that was the inspiration for the Warsaw. And we're like, yeah, we remember that from TV. And then they have the Christmas Story house, which actually is very similar to the Breaking Bad store. Not the same, of course, but similar, in that it's the house, and it was a fan of the movie that ended up buying the house that they filmed a lot of the movie in, and it's a house experience. And then we went from there, and we went to Arcola, Illinois, the birthplace of Raggedy Ann, and then we went from there to the Twister Museum in Oklahoma, and then we found ourselves at the on our way back, we stopped at Sun Records in Memphis, and we were just like, all these things were just, I'm like, there's just pop culture everywhere. Like, we didn't like, and there's no escaping it. I don't think in the modern era, people are like, so when people roll into the Breaking Bad store, especially if they're from afar, do you think there's a good chance they're in Albuquerque because of Breaking Bad? because
Yeah,
that's what brought me there. It was because of that show and Better Call Saul.
Well, I mean, we hear it all the time. It's especially during COVID time, people weren't air traveling.
Yeah.
They were like you, they were traveling through they were driving, and we hear all the time, we weren't even planning to go into New Mexico. We were like in Colorado. I was like, wait, Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
And they just went south. And so we hear that all the time. People coming in primarily because of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. So
are you both natives of Albuquerque?
Ed is born and raised. I've been here long enough to say I'm a native now.
Okay.
I mean, what, 30 plus years? So,
yeah, I think that's a solid amount of time.
Yeah, once I graduated college, I came here. But as Ed was, to touch on what Ed was saying, we not only the people who are Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul fans, people come to Albuquerque and the Breaking Bad store and things like that for people who they know are Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul fans. They may have never seen the show before, but they'll say, hey, oh yeah, I'm going through Albuquerque. Oh, while you're there,
right?
Can you stop and get something for me?
Yeah, and they're constantly FaceTiming them in the store. You can actually hear them scream through the phone speaker, and we tell them, it's like, well, because most of the time they only see the store. They don't go to the museum and photo op area.
Mm-hmm.
We have to tell them, it's like, go through there and make them jealous that they didn't join you on this trip. So yeah, it's all the time we hear that. So,
but as far as the pop culture reference, as you were saying, your whole trip is dictated by pop culture. 20 years ago, even 20, about 20 years ago, people were doing, to see the biggest ball of yarn or the giant pistachio nut or the Crucis Roadrunner. They weren't traveling around the country to see things such as the Twister Museum in Oklahoma.
Right. I didn't even know they had one.
Yes, they're going to have to build a second one when the sequel comes out.
Right. Oh, there's a sequel coming out? That's going to be great.
They just announced it.
Yeah. That is fantastic. Our household
I want to go
major.
to upstate New York. I want to go to the I Love Lucy Museum.
And I was actually going to bring that up. I've been to that in Jamestown, and it's again, it has some similarities with what you're doing because they have a recreated set from both, the major sets from the show, their New York apartment and the Los Angeles apartment. And it's funny because it's blocked off. So you can't really, at least when I went, and that was probably 7 or 8 years ago, you can't actually like immerse yourself in it the same way as you can with your store or the Christmas Story House, or a few other sites. It's just kind of like, almost like it is a museum. You're just like, oh wow, which is funny because I'm like, they didn't film the show in Jamestown. It's not like they filmed it in LA, but it serves the same purpose. It makes it's very much a product of the smartphone era where people want to do the selfie. They want to be able to I was glad at your store that you do have postcards, and I'd send some out, and I kept one. I got the Lawyer Up one that I keep around, and but it's like postcards aren't as common anymore because people can make their own in real time, and they're very individualized. What I wanted to ask about, with you being natives, did you get into the show because it's set in Albuquerque, and do you feel that Breaking Bad could really only be in Albuquerque? Because I know I remember hearing that when they were creating the show, there was talk about having it set in Southern California. There was going to be an LA show, and Vince Gilligan was like, no, it needs to be Albuquerque. It needs to be New Mexico. Do you think that you like the show a lot because of where it's set?
Well, I think the Riverside, California, where it was originally going to be set, but it was, thank God, our tax incentives brought them to New Mexico, and that brought Vince out here. And Albuquerque became its own character of the show.
It really did.
We didn't, believe it or not, we didn't start watching until season 2.
Oh wow!
Was it 2 or 3?
It was 2.
It was 2.
His sister said, "Hey, you guys got to watch this show," and it's set here in Albuquerque.
Yeah.
And so we turned it on and hooked ever since.
Couldn't turn it off. And yeah, it was because of her and our nephew. It was just because of them. And then from there, See, the thing about when I said we had like our Facebook group, one of the things that nobody believed us is, because when they do LA, like if they shoot in LA, it's all in a studio.
Yeah.
Whereas that's why Albuquerque was sort of the sixth character, right? Because they actually showed the real locations. And so our first Facebook group was we wanted to show everybody each location that it was filmed in. And it's not a studio. So that's how we sort of got started on it. And I think that's, and of course, when we see it, we're like, oh, well, we know that place, that kind of piqued our interest. But I think we just kept watching it because of it was so good. It's like we couldn't turn it off.
But could it be anywhere else other than Albuquerque? I don't think so. I mean, I think the location, the desert scenes and the atmosphere and actually even just the scenery it gives it that much more gritty feeling to it.
It really lives up to being a Western too, because of that, and I think a lot of people erroneously think of Western and the West, especially out here in the East, as being like rural, like ultra rural and but when I definitely noticed when I was traveling, like almost as soon as we left Texas, and even before that a little bit, because we went on I-40 out, and I'm like, there's just nothingness for long spans of time, but nobody actually lives out there. The concentration of the population is in the cities, so in fact the West is very urban, not as rural as a lot of people think. There's a lot of wide open space, but there's not people actually inhabiting that space. It's or growing food or doing anything like that, or it's just like nothing, amazing scenery. And as we're driving around, back and forth on either side of it, I'm like, yeah, no wonder that they have a show about, drug lords and stuff like that in a place like this, because it doesn't take long outside of Albuquerque before it's just, you could vanish and nobody would ever know, like you can do all that kind of shady stuff down one of those weird dirt roads that you kind of see in the distance. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think it would work the same way if it was just, because it would almost be cliche. It would just be like another LA story, and with the same kind of tired, overused elements, whereas Albuquerque for most people is pretty fresh, so we don't know a lot about it. And so I remember when I was in your store, I was talking to the employee there, and she was so nice, and she wrote down all the filming locations, and I still have the paper with that on there that I consider a souvenir. I tried to get to as many as I could, but she was saying that a lot of people in Albuquerque kind of have mixed feelings about the show and the way that it portrays Albuquerque as kind of like just a crime-ridden, place, and I can see that. But at the same time, I see a lot of virtue in the city through the show. There's most of the police officers are very good at their job on both programs. They're solid. They are looking out for the best for the city. They seem, I can leave it off from there. But being that you're from there, how has the shows been received by people that watch it?
It wasn't good at first, again, it was, but I think when it got like recognized and everything, and now with Better Call Saul, I think you're getting more and more people that they actually like it. And I'm assuming they also love it now because with all the revenue that comes into the city and the state, because of all the out-towner people coming primarily for the shows, I would think they would love it now. So.
My argument has always been, isn't that going to be the same with any city you portray in a TV show?
Yeah,
right.
They're always going to have that negative aspect to the story. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's what Albuquerque is, or LA is, or New York. It's just a story. Is there some truth to it? Is there meth use in Albuquerque? Yeah, there's meth use in Albuquerque. It's not as rampant as they make, everybody wants to say it is.
I even looked it up. I was like, I want to see. And I was like, we weren't even in the top 10.
Yeah.
For meth.
Oh, really?
That belongs to Phoenix. So maybe they could have done it in Arizona. So
so it really goes back to, wherever you're always going to have the naysayers, no matter where you are. But I would say of the city population, I mean, it's probably less than 30, 20% that, are like, get this out of here kind of thing.
Yeah.
I kind of noticed also, I don't, when they put up the statues, right, of Walter and Jesse at our convention center, there was I would go on Facebook and they always said, don't read the comments, but I wanted to read what the local people were saying. And they had like a couple of people that were like, oh, wow, you're doing a statue for meth dealers.
Right.
But they were overshadowed by everybody's like, oh no, be happy. We're getting, we have all this stuff, don't bring it down. So if it was before, I think it would have been like, it would have been real negative. But now I can see by locals that they love what Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul has done. And just by those two shows, we're getting all of these other movies and TV shows coming to Albuquerque, New Mexico. That's because of and that's where we get a lot of revenue too.
They were the trailblazers in a way, right? Because they
are.
Well, we've become, they've nicknamed us Tamalewood. We're the third largest film industry in the country right now. So you go LA, Atlanta, and then us. And it would have been nice if we had gotten the Marvel contract at the time, but we lost it to Georgia.
Oh,
because their tax incentives during that time were better than our governor was willing to give. But also on that same thing, think of it this way: before Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, what was Albuquerque known for? Bugs Bunny.
Bugs Bunny, yeah, and needs to find.
I don't even think the Balloon Fiesta was that big of a recognition. But if you said Albuquerque, most people can't even spell it.
Right, exactly. I always think about the part in Better Call Saul when he's goes off the rails at the bingo game and he starts listing off all the looks the hills have eyes, or it was a documentary of this place,
right.
And
but if it hadn't been for Breaking Bad, it's filming, the film industry at that time, again, we probably wouldn't have been out there.
I'm glad you brought up the statues as well, because unlike other tributes and things like that, I know there's the Walter White grave marker that was moved, right? Because they had that in a cemetery and then it was moved to like a shopping mall, strip mall type thing. But a thing like a statue, there's a little bit more permanence to it, where it's going to be there for a little while. And we saw a share of those, on our trip as well. There's in Columbus, Ohio, of all places, there's a Arnold Schwarzenegger statue outside their convention center, because I guess his first like Mr. Universe competition was there, and so he always has like a affinity for it, and it almost looks like Atlas outside it. And then not on that trip, but just because I live fairly close to it in Salem, Massachusetts, they have and it's kind of out of place, to be honest with you, but a statue to I forget her name right now, but the main character from Bewitched,
Elizabeth Montgomery.
Yes.
Yeah. So and as far as I know, she has nothing to do with Salem. She's not from there, but it's just because, witches in Salem and this popular show from the 60s. Let's throw it in there. It's just kind of odd placed. And I'm curious, I've loved to talk to people from Salem, and I know a few that are like, yeah, the witches, or witches, it's one or the other. They don't, have that, because, it brings so many people in. Like this month, October, you don't even want to go near Salem, especially on the weekends. It's a madhouse. But, so, when it comes to and I'm so glad that, we're looking at these questions and it's perfect because we're just chatting as we talk. We're getting the answers to a lot of them already, but when it comes to, so you're saying that the store, under the why did you make it, the store was an extension of your Facebook page, your Facebook group, that you wanted to have fellow fans join you and have the experience. And I became a fan of the show, like yourselves, late into it. So I remember when it was first coming out, and I'm like, what is this show with the guy from Seinfeld in his underpants? Like, that's like all the ads always just showed him like in the desert with his tighty whities on and like running around screaming. And I'm like, what's the guy from Malcolm in the Middle doing? Like, I don't understand this. And, he's with some kid, like he's a teacher, like, what's going on? And it wasn't until right after our son was born, and we were staying up late at night, and and we were just binge watching all these shows. And it's exactly what Vince Gilligan had said. Read it afterwards. He said Netflix saved Breaking Bad, because if it hadn't been for Netflix, just the nature of that show, and a lot of shows in that time period and continue to be, where you can't just miss an episode. It's like, I missed ER, I'll just catch the next one. Like some guy came in with a trauma in his head, and I'm sure they'll have another pregnant woman that's going to die if she next week, no big deal. But you can't miss an episode of Breaking Bad and expect to know what the heck's going on in the next one. They don't do recaps very often, right? So Netflix saved the show. Netflix brought me into it, and as soon as I started watching, I'm like, this is brilliant, right? I loved everything about this show. That it's like one of the most flawless programs. I assume that's why you didn't just give up on Breaking Bad after it ended, right? You wanted to continue the story through a store and museum.
I True, yes. But the thing is when we had this Facebook group, and everybody that we talked to around the world, they were still like fervent or whatever with the show. Like it never dwindled. And that's what I always said. It's like, this wasn't like other shows that have been done in Albuquerque where, you'll see it or it just goes away or it gets canceled after 2 seasons. This one just continued. And I always thought, man, it's getting more and more people that just love it. And I said, that's why Mark and I were always like, we can still, we were always still talking about the store or the museum, because it never dwindled, and it always got more and more, even after the show ended. And then they started talking about Better Call Saul, and people were all excited for that. But even when Saul was on, people were still talking about Breaking Bad. So yeah, it's just, people come in, you'll get some people like, it's still a thing. And I'm like, do you see how busy this story is right now? Yes, it's still a thing. It's like, it never ends. And the kids that, couldn't watch it back in the day, now they're the ones that are bringing in their parents who used to watch it. And they're the fans, So, and then you had people who never saw it during COVID and they were stuck in their homes. They saw it through Netflix, and and then you get them. So it's just a continuation.
That's an excellent point. And it makes me think of just a few months ago when Better Call Saul was coming to an end. And I follow several of the stars on Instagram, and they all had their, so long posts and thanks for a good run and everything like that. But you didn't get that same sense of finality that you got from so many other shows in the past, because like you just said, shows don't really die anymore. There's always going to be some way, and a very easy way, to access them. And it's just a matter of kind of putting it on hold, for the next generation to discover. So I guess maybe that's a better way of describing your store. Isn't necessarily you're trying to prolong anything. It's just kind of like keeping the candles lit, for people to, when they discover the show, be like, oh, I have a headquarters to go to, to celebrate the show. Who are some of the best visitors that you've ever seen? People that come in, do a lot of people don costumes? I've seen a few photos lately of people dressed as different characters from the shows, but which one sticks out? Maybe like the first person to ever show up and you had to do a double take. You're like, wow, that's not from the show itself.
You mean like people who look like people, or
yeah, like cosplay almost, like people that
believe it or not, there's a gentleman who comes in and he's actually Mike Ehrmantraut's stand-in.
Oh.
And I think his name is Michael. I can't remember his name, but it's not Michael. I'm trying to remember his name. But that's one of those ones where you'll actually look out, that you'll do a side eye. Wait, is that him? But as far as cosplay go, do we get people coming in dressed in costume?
Yes, but the favorite one I had, it was this teenage girl, and we were busy, so I didn't really see her come in with her parents, and it wasn't until she caught my eye, and I'm like, what the hell? She basically, like you said, how Walter White is in his tidy whities and his green shirt. She came in like that, and here's this teenager in her tidy white, and and I had to stop everything I was doing. I was like, I got to take your picture. You have like just this big, you know, nerve to, come out like that. But that's how much, people just, love the show. It's not really cosplay as too much people, but man, they love, you'll always see them come in t-shirts.
Mm-hmm.
We actually did see a family. It was a mother, son, and her husband, and they were Walter, Skyler, and Walter.
That's
to the point where I was asking our employee, I was like, "Is that kid really using, his crutches, or is that just for the show?" And we were like, "How do we broach this?"
Yeah, right. You don't want to be blunt about it, but
right, yeah. But it was for the show,
Just keep an eye if he puts him off to the side as he's about to, try on the Los Pollos Hermanos apron or something. Well, because it almost lends itself in a weird way. I don't know if you're familiar with the term slipstream storytelling. Like a lot of prequels or fan fiction can be categorized as slipstream, and where basically fans make their own stories based on the original text, or if it's literature or the film itself. And I feel like that's sort of like a way of thinking now that a lot of us have, where we don't want the story to end. We want to make our own version of it, and venues such as your store/museum are perfect for that, because you kind of provide a set for them to take pictures at least and kind of live out the story, but they can then extend the narrative beyond that. And it's such a very, I think, quite a internet age 21st century attitude of I see what I like, I enjoy it, I want to put myself literally into it, and then extend the story in my direction that I want. It kind of reminds me of I don't know if you're familiar with the graphic artist. She's a cartoon artist named Raina Telgemeier, and she's written a lot of books, mainly young adult type. One, her most famous one is Smile, and it's a true story about growing up in San Francisco in the late 80s, early 90s. And she had a very really bad accident where her teeth got knocked out, and like real bad dental surgery, and the whole book's about her dealing with that. And I've seen her in person a few times when she's gone around to different mainly like comic book stores and stuff to do appearances. And my wife's a huge fan of hers, and she told us at one that she kind of got freaked out because a girl came in dressed identical to the character in the book, and even she had cardboard cutout word bubble that said, high school, here I come, which is directly from the frame in the book. And it was extra odd for her because it's an autobiography. And she's like, that drawing was based on a photograph of me from my first day of high school. And so it was like so meta. I'm like, okay, so let me get this straight. You took this photograph on your actual first day of high school. Years later, you write it into your comic book. Then a girl somewhere, in Maine reads this book, loves it so much, hears that you're coming to her store, so she gets the exact same clothes, dresses up, and then you're looking at yourself through a filter of cartoon. It was just so much layers to it. I'm like, that's so incredible. So that's where my curiosity went, because I don't think that that's rare thinking nowadays. I think people utilize, all of this authenticity that people like yourselves present to us. And, we really appreciate it, by the way, being able to interact with our favorite stories in such a deep, meaningful way. Has anybody ever, when visiting, I don't know, this is a weird question, but have they ever gotten like kind of emotional in a way? Because
oh yeah.
Okay, tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I've had, since the store started, I mean, I tell, Mark was only working part-time in the beginning. He now works full-time because he actually had a real job when we first started. We had to pay the bills, right? We didn't know if the store was going to last. But I used to tell, I've had people cry when they come in. I've had people scream when they come in, or when they're in the museum area. I've had a teenage girl, because I have tattoos of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul all over my body with their actual signatures.
Oh, wow.
I had this one teenage girl, she looked at it, she saw Aaron Paul's signature, and she just started to cry. I've had a grown man all tattooed up, and he stopped in the doorway, and he looked at me, and I was like, oh God, what's he going to do? And he's like, don't freak out if I start crying. I'm like, no, everybody does that. It's all good, you know? I don't know if you have any stories, Mark.
I mean, I have people like that they, you just hear this loud scream, like Ed's had screams, or oh my God, or
we are the adult Disneyland. They always say
Yeah.
that. Like I'm at Disneyland for adults is what they say.
I did have somebody who came in day before, was it day before yesterday or during Balloon Fiesta? I forgot it was. And he came up to me and he goes, "This was such an emotional experience. This is better than going to NASA."
Wow.
And I was like, really, NASA? Us, NASA? No. And he goes, it was more than I could have imagined.
Yeah. You should put a banner out front just as better than NASA.
Better than NASA.
Just
one reviewer says better than NASA.
Our employees also said that people came in and they just came back from Yellowstone. And they said, this is even, it outweighs Yellow. I'm like, what? It's so bizarre. You're just like, it's a huge compliment and everything.
Yeah.
But it's like, it freaks us out when people say that, but it makes us very happy. I always say,
it validates what we're doing.
Yes, it's did it right. So
that's I guess the most important thing is that it communicates to you instantaneously that you did some good for people.
There was a need for people to experience this. But what Ed and I always say is if we didn't have to pay the bills, we wouldn't have the store. We would just have the museum.
Right? I see.
Because the reason why we do it is for the fans, is for the museum part. I mean, granted, the gift shop is nice to buy stuff and everything, but it's the actual museum part that we really is our end goal, is the museum.
Yeah. It's very populist. It's very democratic in that way, because it's when in the world of fandom, I feel that there's a lot of gatekeeping. That there's, I belong to lots of different fan groups on Facebook and stuff like that. And I've run into it now and then where there's almost like you have to prove yourself what a big fan you are by, answering these questions the right way. What's your favorite, Ramones song? And if it's not the right one off the right album, you're not a real fan, blah, blah, blah. And I didn't get that sense at all when I walked into the Breaking Bad store. It was just like, you're one of us, right? We're fans too. And it's just, welcome to our world, right? Welcome into this story that means so much to you. And, and I really appreciated that. And I think a lot of people do, because there's not a gatekeeper at all.
And then also it's just the people who've never seen the show. We get a lot of I've never seen the show, or as some people like to say, I've never seen this movie before.
The movie.
And then we're like, well, you need to check it out. Or people are like, I watched the first couple episodes and it wasn't for me.
So many people stop at episode 2.
Get past
2 or 3.
Get past the body in the bathtub.
Yes, that's the part.
Yeah. It's like, continue watching it. And I promise you will not be. Gentleman came in today. He watched Breaking Bad. He watched El Camino. He watched 2 episodes of Better Call Saul and he gave up.
Really?
It just wasn't grabbing me. And I'm like,
keep going.
for me, continue to watch it, because you will not be disappointed.
Breaking Bad is an outstanding document of the period it was on the air, 2008 to 2013. The cable show's themes, characters, and storytelling style are all reflective of the confusing and often tumultuous times, and the fact that Netflix included the series in its pioneering streaming platform while the show was still being made for AMC, thus saving it from being canceled, is something that could have happened only when it did. It's also, in this podcaster's opinion, the greatest TV drama ever made. And I'm certainly not alone in that opinion. The show and its spin-off prequel series, Better Call Saul, were both as successful as they were because of the connections millions of viewers worldwide made with the shows. And that's where Ed and Marq come in. The Breaking Bad store in Albuquerque a place that is perhaps misnamed as just a store, because it's more of a celebration of all things Walter Wright related, with show props and photo opportunities that put visitors directly into the shows. And when it comes down to it, isn't this what people have always been and always will be after, when they find deep meaning in something cultural? So I guess one thing that I got to ask, and I think that a lot of people probably ask you this all the time, stars of the shows, have they visited the store? And if so, how are they towards what you're doing?
Yes, they have, but we also do meet and greets at the store.
Mhm.
So that was one of the goals, one of the dreams that we had ever since we first started, was to have meet and greets. Our new place that allows us to do it. But as far as like people coming into the store, yeah, a few of them have.
Mhm.
I mean, not the big name ones, but
Well, now wait.
I mean, like we're talking like the Bryans and the Aarons and what.
Well,
Yeah.
no, because Aaron tried to come into the
Oh,
store.
sorry, my bad. Yes.
Yeah, Aaron during the plague, after things started opening up again, we had limitations, like you could only have 25% capacity
Yeah.
in your store at any given time. And Aaron had mentioned to some crew members that he attempted to come to our store while they were filming here for Better Call Saul. And he would, mask and sunglasses. So I would, whoever was
Yeah.
watching the door would never have known this was
Right,
Aaron
right.
Paul. And he said that he went to the door, and who was ever at the door was like, "Oh, we're at capacity. Can you please wait outside until some people leave?" And he let his wife go in and do some shopping, and he stayed outside. So he never got to come into the store.
He said he looked through the window.
Yes, he looked through the window.
It sounds like a very Jesse thing to do, actually. Like just kind of hang around a store and like look through the window and just be.
Well, he couldn't be out. They were him and Brian, when they were here, they had to be locked in a hotel room, right? So no one could tell. And Brian, they said, was the good boy, but Aaron could not. So he snuck out. He made sure that he wasn't noticed because he just couldn't. I guess he just doesn't want to be locked in a room. And again, we were just following rules, and unfortunately, it just had to be him that we kicked out. So.
Yeah, and then we also, another crew member mentioned that Mark Margolis stopped by the store.
Mhm.
Oh, neat.
But he came by when we were closed.
Right.
Oh,
So, and we think it was, I think one of our employees had gone to the restroom
oh no.
because he said he was able to see his bobblehead in the store, and if our blinds had been down, he wouldn't have been able to see him. But but we've also, like, Patrick Fabian from Better Call Saul.
Mhm.
He just came into the store to shop,
Yeah, a few
Neat.
times.
and
He would just come in.
but you said he would also tell the customers, "Hi, I'm Howard Hamlin."
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
There was one time he was just talking to me, and this lady came right behind him, and he just turned around and said, "Hello, I'm Howard Hamlin." She had this look of, "Oh my, like I'm in the Twilight Zone." Right? It was-
That must have been the weirdest thing to experience. That did he dress like Howard, or was he like Howard on
No.
a casual day? Just
It was a cash day.
Yeah. Well, he was just in his. Well, I think he was out hiking, wasn't he?
He had just came. One of the things that he loves to do, and he's because he bought a house here now, so
yeah.
he likes to go hiking in the mountains. He's a very physical. He likes to exercise a lot, guy.
Yeah, one of those outdoors.
One of those outdoorsy
Yeah,
guys.
one of those guys. Yeah, not much
oh,
of that around New Mexico.
Rex Lynn from Better Call Saul, who plays Kevin Whittel,
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Mesa Verde Kevin.
Yeah.
He came into the store with his now girlfriend Reba McEntire,
Oh, neat.
and our employee said nobody recognized him.
No.
Only one person recognized Reba, so
Yeah.
It's just weird because like if Patrick Fabian was there, and the few times he was there, every time he's there, it's so weird. Like he'll come in, there's nobody in the store, maybe just like a couple of people.
Mm-hmm.
And one time we had this couple, and they were all in the store by themselves. And I was talking to Patrick in one of the back rooms, and while he was talking to me, they looked at me like, "Is that him?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I was like, and I stopped Patrick. I'm like, I think they want to talk to you. And he just spent so much time with them. He took pictures with them.
That's great.
Like, folks, man, you had it, you had this private moment with this actor. Like, I know, we also had it when we had a meet and greet with Raymond Cruz, who plays Tuco, and Nodo's Cesar Garcia. And they wanted to come to the store the day before the meet and greet. And so we had to shut down the store. We just shut everything down. We lowered the blinds, and they wouldn't be, bothered. And there was two couples in the store right when because Mark had called me and says, I'm bringing them in. I was like, just so you know, they're coming in here. Don't engage them unless they engage you. And, Raymond, he's a very intimidating guy. I mean, this guy's Tuco, right? And he went to them. He's like, hi, guys, how y'all doing? And they were just like, hi, very nice,
RJ Mitty came into the store.
RJ Mitty, yeah. Walter Jr. We've had a few. So yeah.
And it seems like that's it seems like a lot of, I'm sure Patrick Fabian's not the only one that a lot of the cast has kind of fallen in love with. Like, they wouldn't have really thought of going to Albuquerque on their own, but because they spent so much time filming the show there, they realized that it's a gem and that they should stay there, and they kind of fell in love with the community a lot in the city.
Well, I know Giancarlo, he bought a home. He lives here now full time when he's not traveling, and he's always traveling.
Yeah.
Bob has a house.
Which now he's loaning to Reese Sehorn, because now she's going to have a new show with Vince Gilligan. Against Vince Gilligan, he's not doing the Breaking Bad stuff anymore, but he's developing a new show here with Reese Sehorn. Because again, the thing about with Gilligan, it's not just the incentives anymore. He loves the crew. The crew always stays together when it comes to him, and that's what he loves. So yeah, but there are a few of them still have houses here.
Yeah.
That's so much. It's like, who would have thought, kind of thing that, back, like I was saying earlier, with those ads of just a guy in his underpants running around the desert, that it would turn into such a huge monumental thing. Yes. Oh, Casper has arrived. Can I hold it up?
Sure, yeah. I didn't want to interrupt.
Oh, it's fine.
I found him and he's perfect.
My wife just came home with this Casper toy. It looks like the top of like a cup or something like that. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Well, hey, we're getting ready for a Halloween party, and we're in my garage right now, so it's like we're trying to decorate as best we can to, and so.
So the screen behind you isn't a blue screen that you used to?
No, it's a white screen just for a projector screen, and I had these like lofty ideas of like, I'm going to put like videos behind me, so like when I'm talking about something, it'll be and because I'm in a detached garage, the Wi-Fi gets kind of sluggish out here. That's why I was saying how good this connection is. It must be because of the chilly night right now, because there's so many times where I tried to do it. I did one a few weeks ago about the Haunted Mansion, and I was going to have the Haunted Mansion like a ride through while I was talking about it, and it just shut down the whole Wi-Fi. Like it was like too much, and I'm like because I was looking forward to it. But that's our projector screen for when we want to watch movies and stuff like that out in the garage. Nice. And I just so my when I was visiting the store and visiting Albuquerque, because I like the show so much, I recognize immediately that sixth character that Albuquerque is. Like and on our way through the first time, we ended up staying at a campground, which I thought was going to be like out in the wilderness, but it wasn't. It was in a neighborhood, and it even had like a big gate that opened up. And I'm like, is Gus going to be in there? Like, is this? I'm like, whoa, this is really like, I feel like I'm in the show. And maybe I've watched a bit too much Breaking Bad, because when I finally got in and I was talking to the person working there, and they're like, yeah, if you need any quarters or anything, if you need anything, in the store, this little corner store just down that neighborhood. I'm like, I don't know if I want to go venturing around. Who am I going to run into? Is Tuco and his gang going to show up? And so it's almost maybe too paranoid. And it was kind of funny because on the way back, I was talking to some people at the hotel, and we stayed at the hotel just a few blocks from your store, the Casas. I forget the name of it now, but it was like these little houses. It was really nice, a bed and breakfast. And one of the women working there is like, I've never watched that show. She's like, I've lived here all my life. I don't know anything about either one. It's just kind of, and she wasn't like proud about that. She's like, I just never got around to it. It's just kind of, just omnipresent, I guess. It's always just around you all the time. So when it comes to, the store, do you see, I think you got the recipe just right, that it's not going to go away anytime soon. If anything, you might even find yourself expanding as time goes on. Do you see yourself doing more though than just the museum and the store? Do you see, a lot of more like appearances from the actors? Because a lot of them are local, right? They're not Hollywood actors. A lot of them. That some of them
No,
are.
most of them are California based.
Oh, really? Okay, so they
Like
come.
we're having Saul's camera crew in this weekend, or
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
one's coming from Oklahoma, one's coming from California, and one is local.
Okay.
So, next year, our first meet and greet plan for the first of the year is the Salamanca twins, and of course, they're based out of California. We're in talks with to try to get a Salamanca reunion with the Salamanca twins and Mark Margolis. We're trying to work out the deals on that. But they're all California based, actually. I think Mark Margolis is New York, right?
He's New York.
New York.
Yeah.
But the future, and this is kind of goes on when we sat down to do this business.
Mhm.
I told Ed straight up, I was like, I'm giving us 5 years after the end of Better Call Saul. That was my business model, was to get us 5 years after Better Call Saul. And then I started thinking about it more and more. And as we've touched on before, because of Netflix, those kids who were too young to watch it when their parents were watching it are now grown up enough to watch it. And then when they start having kids, they're going to pass it on to those kids. And so that business model's kind of altered a little bit. But as far as expansion goes,
we still talk about it. I mean, we again, ever since we had our little store, we always discussed what's next. And I always tell everybody, I'm never satisfied. I always want to keep growing. Ask Mark. It's like, I'm always like, can we do this? Can we do this? He's like, oh my God, wait, we're still trying to do the first thing that you want. And then Mark will tell me, it's like, I think we can maybe put this in, but we do have I don't know if it's our final thing, but there is something that we want to do. It's move to even a bigger store. It's the stuff that we have planned, we want to do. We always have these ideas in our head, and it's like, a lot of them have come true so far, but we just still have more. I'm never happy. I always, I love what I do, but it's like, I want to do more. I'm Veruca Salt, really. I'm never happy. I want more.
Well,
So
he came in, a customer came in today and said, hey, how does all this come to be? And I was like, well, Ed comes to me and says, Mark, I want to do this. And then I have to put pen to paper to make it, this is okay. This is what you want. This is what we can do. And then I turn to another coworker of ours and I'm like, hey, Chris, we need this built. We need this. We need you to be able to fit that square peg into that round hole. And like we were just discussing with the landlord knocking down some walls to expand the museum.
Because you were there last summer. If you would come now, it would practically be a whole lot different than what you saw last year.
Okay.
Because it's always changing. We're always changing everything, and then people that come in maybe early next year, it's going to be changed again because of what we're getting soon as far as props are concerned and what we want to do. But we're kind of busting at the seams now, and now we're just like, okay, how are we going to make all this fit? So we have to start thinking in the future.
How do we make this fit without sacrificing something?
Right.
That's very refreshing to hear, because similar things could very well just kind of collect dust. Other types of places, in also in upstate New York, there's in Seneca Falls, which is understood to be the inspiration for Bedford Falls from It's a Wonderful Life. They have, not only is the Women's Rights National Park right there, because that's where the Seneca Falls Convention took place in 1848, but just down the street they have It's a Wonderful Life museum. And it's a really nice museum, and it has a few artifacts from the movie, and it's mainly just like, kind of like clippings and things that like the actors gave as time went on. But it doesn't have that dynamic nature that you're just describing of like, okay, here's the material I'm working with. It's now 2 entire series runs and a movie, but what else can I do with it? And that's such like, I guess that's the vision that, entertainers and business people for the last, 200 years have had, but it's also very 21st century of like, the sky is the limit. You could really go a lot of different places with it. You could, you get it even more immersive. I like the specific location of it because it's kind of, and don't take this the wrong way, it's kind of unassuming. You would think the Breaking Bad experience would be like right next to Walter White's house, which I understand would not be a good idea because I guess the residents there would not go well with them. But like somewhere very close to a filming location. But as far as I know, really nothing in Old Town, right, was in the show. It's not even really featured at all. And so I was like, when I drove past it, I'm like, well, maybe that's one of several, throughout town. Maybe there's little outposts, but then, and we hung around long enough to, you'd be open when I went in there, and I'm like, no, I get the feeling this is the one, and it's just like kind of among the, like some souvenir shops is around there, and the was it a mission around the corner, the old church and everything, and so it's just like built into Albuquerque. It's part of the city's story.
We had this conversation at dinner the other night because we, talking about new location, bigger location. And I had to ask him, I was like, is there anywhere else in town that this would work? And it wouldn't.
Right.
Town is the location for this place. And it's not just because of where, it's because that's the tourist mecca of the city.
Yeah.
People come to that part of the city, and they come to the Breaking Bad store, not because they're fans, because there are some people who aren't fans that come to the store still for people they know who are fans. Mm-hmm. So because of the tourism in Old Town, we get that business for the non-Breaking Bad people.
Right.
And like you said, next to the car wash, but the only people who are going to be going out there are the fans.
Right.
Only the fans are going to go to the car wash, take pictures of the car wash. Whereas in Old Town, there's people there shopping just to shop.
Yeah, I mean, you get, I always say this, you get these grandmas that don't know anything about it. And, they're like, is it bad of me that I'm getting, this blue sky rock candy for my grandchildren? And I'm like, no, it means you're a cool grandma, know? They wouldn't travel outside of Old Town probably just to go to a Breaking Bad store. Right. But they see it and they know that their grandkids or their children or, off to college or whatever, they love the show. And so that's why they're like, oh, let me go check what it is. And what's great is sometimes you actually get the people that they don't know anything about it, but they go through the store, they go through the museum, they see the artifacts, they see the other customers there with big smiles on their faces. And we always hear them when they're leaving. It's like, I got to start watching the show,
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, do it, try it. And then we get other people like, man, I haven't seen it in a while. I'm going to restart it again. It makes me want to watch this show. Mm-hmm. And I say this now, where Albuquerque was the 6th character of Breaking Bad. Well, the store now is like it has its own entity now. Mark and I created it, but now it's in its own realm. It's like I feel like we work for the store. The store it's like King Kong, because people they come in and they are just raptured by this store.
Yeah.
They just cannot. I mean, we've had people they would stay there for 3 to 4 hours, and they're like, I'm not creeping you out. I'm like, no, people do it all the time. I said, do whatever you want, just make it legal. That's right. All.
That's and we've touched on it a few times. It is very much specific to the time period that this can happen, because, and I'll go back and kind of revise my statements about the It's a Wonderful Life museum. It is a nice museum, but it's also a product of the movie it represents. It's a lot of people fell in love with that movie because, and it was not a hit when it first came out in the 40s. It was a nice movie. People liked it, but didn't have a following until the 70s when NBC started to air it on Christmas Eve, and people built it into their traditions. And then similar a few years later with A Christmas Story, that flopped in the movies, and it wasn't until it went to VHS. And so likewise, that's why, the big difference between those two is that I remember, so we took a picture outside the Christmas Story house last year, but my wife and I had been there to do the whole experience, probably, like I said, about 6-7 years ago. And as soon as you walk in, it's like, okay, here's a bunch of bunny costumes, the pink bunny that you can put on. Here's BB guns. We have the leg lamp. We even have soap you can put in your mouth. Like, they give you kind of a tour. It's not much of a tour because, they only filmed some of the movie there. It's not, the actual, but it was just like, have fun. And that's such a product of the VHS era, because the reason why we get so, and then TBS took on and just played that show over and over again for, every Christmas, 24 hours of A Christmas Story. And that's where they get their flocking of people, to come in, because that's that generation. So this is now the Netflix generation. And that's why it's even more like, you don't have to be in a place that was actually filmed in. You just need to give people the kind of surroundings and the props and, the pieces of it. The other place that kind of reminds me of too is in Springfield, Massachusetts. Well, there's the Basketball Hall of Fame, which I'll get to that in just a moment. But what I was thinking about originally is a couple years ago, they opened up the Dr. Seuss Museum there, because he's originally from Springfield, I guess, and his house is there. And I recognized almost immediately after we went in there that it's an iPhone or, a smartphone museum. That's the majority of it, even though it's all about books and literature and, artwork. They want you putting your arm around thing one or thing two and taking a picture, a selfie, the cat in the hat. There's a whole screen that you can dance around, and it's like, and I've worked at museums for a good, period of time, but a lot of the museums I've worked at are history museums. And so we have the house tours, and you can go into old homes. And that's something that, has been consistent for the last 100 years or so, that, they open up, step back in time into, whatever time period. But in those settings, there's not anything that people can kind of base it on. They're like, oh yeah, this is a house from the 1780s, I guess, sure. Whereas with something like you're doing, or A Christmas Story, or any other media-based thing, mass media, it's accuracy that people are looking for. Do you ever get any people like saying, the bell on, Hector's wheelchair, that's not the right kind, he used it,
I don't think I've ever gotten a customer or a visitor to nitpick the
right.
experience.
That's good.
Once they get in there, they're like, oh my gosh, I got to sit in a wheelchair with the bell and pretend to be, Hector.
We've gotten actually a lot of people saying, man, you guys,
the detail
to it
that's
is
good.
amazing. And it's like, well, yeah, because we're so detailed. It's like, it has to be, So what Mark says, people come in and they're like, I love your museum. It's pinpoint to what it is on the show. It's like, well, because that's what we want. I mean, like if you say you go to the Los Pollos counter in the back and you see the menu, that menu is from Better Call Saul. They had a little mistake. So the person that printed it, she gave us that menu, and that's from the show. So
because they couldn't use it. And it was just going to get thrown away. But yeah, it was the detail that we were concerned about. When we built the counter to stand behind at Los Pollos, it was, the red stripe had to be so big, and then the blue and the white and all that stuff. Because there would be those fans who come in and, I was worried that those fans would come and go, well, this isn't the actual red that they used in the restaurant.
And I don't want Gilligan coming in here and saying,
Right.
well, that doesn't represent me at all. It's like, yeah, we do sell Walter White underwear, but it's like tidy whitey underwear.
Yeah.
But we're not going to sell edible underwear because that's not, cool to the show.
Right.
But that everything that we try to do, it should represent the uniqueness and the how great the shows were. That's how we think of it.
I've had one person say, "Oh, that's not quite right," but it was actually a set designer.
Okay.
So when we were doing our viewing parties, one of the person in Better Call Saul, the whole tunnel scene where Lalo's leaving his compound. Of course, that's all set.
Right.
That this person created, and he's the one who cut the foam and everything. And he's like, "Yeah." He goes, "The columns you all use for Saul's office are not accurate." And I was like, "Well, get your behind in here and make us a couple." He's like, "Because we had to cut those all out of styrofoam because, or whatever foam they use.
Yeah.
They couldn't find the right one that they needed." And so I told him, I was like, "Get in there and make me one."
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm doing it on a budget. I'm not a set down person. So, but that's the only time I've ever had anybody say something about accuracy.
Yeah, and I guess he gets a pass because
he gets a pass.
it was but it seems like the quality standards that you're talking about, and I've talked to a lot of people on a number of different subjects over the last year on this podcast, and one thing seems to remain absolutely true is that the care that goes into the finished product well beforehand, that proactive vision and making sure everything is just so, is what makes so many things endure and stand the test of time. So and that's clear with the program itself. Both Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, they only expect the best. Even the episodes that aren't as popular tend to be more about substance and story and not a lot of action, but they're not bad episodes. They're usually wonderfully written and directed and acted and everything like that. And so again, you're an extension of that. I don't think we'd be talking right now, or not that I'm the only talk to like you come to me for the only the best show up on this podcast. But what I'm saying is, like, your business probably would not have lasted very long if it was just a slap together, we're making silly souvenirs of everything. There's a lot of care that went into it, and that definitely shows in that you're growing even though the shows have ended, that you're continue to go there.
Again, we, even with our local artists that sell their items with us, Mark and I are very it has to be very unique for us to sell these items in the store. And we tell new people that it's like, yay or no, it's not. And it's not we're being, jerks about it or uppity. It's just because, if people come here, we want them to see something and be like, oh my God, I've never seen anything like this ever. But it's because we're the only store in the world that sells this stuff. And we want to make it unique for fans and for visitors. So,
and we don't want anything to diminish the brand.
And the brand,
right.
Yeah.
Because when we sat down and came up with the concept and discussed everything, that was one of the things. It's like, we can do all of this, but we have to make sure that the brand itself, the Breaking Bad brand, is protected. And
because Sony knows who they contacted us. They know who we are. Vince knows who we are. And I don't want them to be going to our website and be like, well, why do they have this? It has to be unique. It has to be authorized. We have to sell authorized product, of course, but other stuff, it has to, like Mark said, has to be the brand and has to be very out of this world. I always say, if I want it in my collection, then I want to sell it in the store.
I was actually going to ask you about that, getting permission and stuff. I talked to a performer, an actor that works at Beetle House NYC a few months ago, and he's actually the same one I talked about with the Haunted Mansion a few days ago. And that's a Tim Burton themed restaurant, and I asked, do you need to run it past them? And in that situation, it's again like it's on their radar. Tim Burton and all the different companies, they know it exists, they know it's out there, but because it kind of is in the realm of just performance art kind of thing, they don't necessarily need to run it by. But you're saying that Sony Pictures and all the there is that standard that you have to live up to.
When we opened up in 2020, we got the call from the Sony lawyers, and we had a long conference call with them in regards to, this is what you're going to do, this is how you're going to do it. We said we want local artists to be represented, because there's a lot of local artists who have their own take on Breaking Bad.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, go for it. We don't want anything to diminish the brand. So let's keep it good, is
Right.
what they said, pretty much. And then they gave us their supplier list, and we just order from them, and then we have our local artists.
And they've been fantastic. I mean, again, Mark contacts them every January just to see if there's anybody new that we can go and buy items for the authorized,
Mm-hmm.
and that's it. We've had people from Sony go to the store, but I don't know if they're there for business, but a lot of them are there like, wow, this is, they love the store. They show us their the badge that they're from Sony, and I just, I don't know if they're taking notes or they're just there just to shop,
Mm-hmm.
And Vince Gillen, he knows about us too. He knows who Mark and I are. He's invited us to the season 6 premiere in Los Angeles when Better Call Saul, a week and a half before, or a week before the show started. He's actually sent us some gifts. It's been, so
the relationship is very, very, very solid.
Yeah.
Well, because you're promoting the show, you're not, like you said, you're not diminishing it. You're not making fun of it or just ripping it off.
It's not a parody by any means.
Right. Yeah. So,
he wishes us nothing but continued success. So
that's awesome. Have you ever? I don't know if you've come to the Northeast at all, but in Vermont, in Waterbury, I think it is. It's Ben and Jerry's factory. I don't know if you've ever been up that way. And they have it's if you ever watch that movie, Me, Myself, and Irene, it's in the background there. He goes to, that's where he like falls down the hill, and you can act that out. I think I tried it once. But they have a flavor graveyard. So it's a whole section of like flavors they tried, but for whatever reason, some are obvious why they were garbage, but others they had to say goodbye to them. Do you have your own flavor graveyard at the Breaking Bad store? Is there anything you ever tried, didn't quite catch on, and you had to say goodbye to?
I mean, just not really. I mean, we just have like, we have these styles of shirts that we pick that don't sell. We get rid of those. Mm-hmm. There are some artists who their stuff, they come into the store and it sits on the shelf for a long time where we're like, you know what, it's not really working out. We'd like you to go ahead and take your stuff back. But nothing
big where we like, oh my God, this is like the big thing and it doesn't go anywhere. I mean, it's kind of funny because our employee, he's like, somebody could drop a piece of paper and the person behind it can pick it up and be like, how much is this? I mean, it's just, we have our Sol desk, and our employee, she actually makes like letterhead from Sol, like these fake things, and people take them, even it's like, I don't know why it's not real. They'll even take pencils that are in his cup. They just take the pen. It's like, and
they're just regular, just pencils I buy at Walgreens or something.
It's like, he didn't use it, people, but they'll take it. So
I think it's more of, hey, look what I got from the Breaking Bad.
Right. I mean, people take our gift cards because they have the logo on it. It's like, can I just take this? I'm like, well, okay. Or they want our shopping bags because it has the logo on it. And I was like, can I get another one?
A lot of people print out the receipt because it has the logo on it.
Yeah.
They don't need the receipt, but they want the receipt.
Well, I'm definitely, I find myself in that category. And I think, we live in a time period where there's a show called Hoarders, and it keeps a lot of people like looking at their own, be like, am I a hoarder? Am I a pack rat? Am I somewhere on that spectrum? And I know in that trip, I'm glad I got a shadow box because we put a lot of it in there as keepsakes, but I do have a lot of just from my different travels and interests and stuff like that. I still have ticket stubs from, the Phantom Menace that I'm like, I'm going to post this somewhere. I'm going to put it, and it's just like these little tchotchkes, these little keepsakes. But it seems that you guys definitely hit a home run with yours because, the show, they're fantastic. Just perfect golden age of TV material, and I feel like your store just hits the exact same wavelength, and so it's just so great that you've been successful with this. And
I know we have to wrap up soon. but I know that, on that same note, we went to the Friends Experience in New York,
Yeah.
which is amazing if you ever get a chance to do it. Well, we got some ideas for our museum that are going to be coming up soon. But the water bottles that they sell for just the water,
Yeah.
it says Friends Experience on the bottle, and it's sitting on our shelf in our living room.
Yeah, we're the same way,
Collectors are organized hoarders, is what.
That's true. That's a good way of putting it. I have to tell you, my wife is and if I gave you a panoramic view of any room in my house, you would find at least 2 or 3 doll houses. She has so many of them. And what she did, and she started doing a couple of years ago, is she calls it, and I actually gave her the name, one-story houses. All the houses are based on stories, movies, TV shows, books.
Oh.
And so she has, and a lot of them are, like I said before, the slipstreamy style, where it's like, it's not an exact replica, but like it's represented. So like she has, I'm looking over in the corner, there's a Beetlejuice one over there. Which, by the way, the Beetlejuice brought me to East Corinth, Vermont a couple of years ago, just to see where they filmed the opening segment, the scene. And we got a piece, speaking of collecting stuff, we got a piece of the bridge that breaks in that movie. So because the woman that lived in the house right next to where the bridge, where the Maitlands drive through the side of, it's a brand new bridge now. It's all paved over and stuff. And her garden was lined with the old wood left over from, and she's like, yeah, take some, I don't care. And so I have this relic of that movie in my garage. But she has a friend's so essentially the kind of things that you do in your actual store, she does in dollhouse form. And so she has a friend's Central Perk and Monica's apartment dollhouse, and it looks like a set of a TV show, and it's just gone on. So I'm going to encourage her to do some kind of Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul arrangement. I think that would be just fantastic. And she leans more towards Saul. That's her show between the two of them.
Do it in a replica of the White House.
Yes.
Because the house inside is completely different than what is on screen.
And she'll have to, and then we could send it to you, and you could give tours of it, with those mini cameras, and just
we can scan the blueprints for you and send
or we could do a before and after, right? So like while he's living in it, and then when he comes back, and put the graffiti on it and everything. I'm gonna give her a new project. I'm looking right now. I'm like looming over me is like 2 doll houses that we picked up. I don't know if you can see that one.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
That's a huge one. And then over in the corner, I don't know if you can see from this angle, but there's Beetlejuice. And that's just the garage. So back in the house, there's endless amounts. And like Wizard of Oz is there. That was our first one, I think.
It goes back to that pop culture.
Yeah. What she does in her houses is exactly what you do. And we have less than a minute left. So I want to say thank you for several things, including joining me tonight, but also on behalf of Breaking Bad Saul Goodman fandom, thank you for making such a wonderful immersive experience that's so welcoming to us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. We love doing it. Again, the store's for the fans. And since you loved it, we did our job. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. If we can just get one like that, we're happy.
Yeah, that's it.
And now you can close up and
close the store now.
We're done. That guy in New Hampshire liked it. So thanks for listening to the EPS podcast. I hope this isn't our last time that we do something together. I think it would be just great, maybe to even talk about one of the shows as a primary source of the time period.
Definitely. Let's do it.
We'll be open to it.
Awesome. Thank you and take care. I hope you have a wonderful night, and thank you. It was wonderful talking to Ed and Marq about their store, the Breaking Bad Store ABQ in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which, like everything else, is a primary source. And I promise you, listeners, that I'll soon get the video up so that you can take a look at some of the doll houses my wife makes. We're about halfway through season 2 of the EPS podcast. I really hope you've liked what you've heard so far. Full episodes like this one have been coming out on Thursdays, and they'll continue to even after the break, which comes towards the end of December. If you like what you hear, consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/EPS podcast. Follow the show on social media, especially on Instagram and newly on YouTube. I hope you tune in again soon to the EPS podcast, where everything is a primary source.